Now, this lesson is on the second section. As you can see here, section 2, called banking, under the topic called finance. Now, in some of the previous lessons, we had discussions on interests. We discussed interests, what interest means, the interest rate, the related terms, the simple interest, and the compound interest. We also looked at how to calculate simple interest and compound interest. In this second section of banking, we would like to look at the related concepts in banking before we go to inflation. So our second topic, very much the section we would like to look at, the section of banking before we go to inflation. Now in banking, we are going to discuss a number of things. The finance application topic, and in it specifically, you will be able to, by the end of this second section, you will be able to understand how interest is calculated on different types of bank accounts. Okay, so you see, excuse me, we are still looking at calculation of interest even in this section here of banking. So yes, by the end of the chapter, you will be able to understand how interest is calculated on different types of accounts. Now remember, there are different types of accounts, and sometimes different banks offers those different types of accounts. Some of the accounts are meant to encourage people to save more money. Some of the accounts are meant to encourage people to do transactions, you know, where, for example, they lower the rates so low so that each time you move on to do this element of transaction here and there, you are charged so low. Now, the other thing is that by the end of this chapter, you will be able to understand how small loans and hire purchase agreements work. The concept of small loans, you know, small loan, basically someone has been given some money, some small loan, and is expected to pay back after some times. We will also look at that possibly, and the concept of hire purchase. Now we had a discussion on hire purchase. Excuse me. We discussed hire purchase in one previous lesson, and our discussion of hire purchase was comprehensive, and we had a discussion on, you know, we had a discussion on some concept with an example. Here you can see for yourself. So in this example, in this example on hire purchase, what we have is that someone, in this case called Kim, wants to buy herself a television. She looks at her finances and realizes that she does not have the money to buy a new TV right now. So she decides to buy a TV on hire purchase agreement. Now, this is an example that we already discussed. I'm just trying to share with you so that you can remember. So here is the TV with cash. The TV is 12,999, or she could buy on a hire purchase agreement. The hire purchase agreement means you purchase as if you're hiring. So you basically pay some money known as deposit, the first installment. Then the remaining amount of money, you pay it over some period of time. So like the way you can see here, what we are having is that the deposit is 14% of this original cash price. So the cash price is what? Is 12,000. And now 14% of the cash price is what we call the deposit. And now the balance is supposed to be paid over a period of 24 months. That is 14% deposit and 24 equal monthly payments to the value of 13,191.39. So yes, we had a discussion on this question. We calculated how much Kim would pay for the deposit, which is what? Which is the 14% of this amount of money. Then we also calculated how much money Kim have to pay every month, okay? That is how much money she has to pay every month. We calculated that, and we also calculated the total amount that Kim will pay for her hire purchase, you know, on the what? On the hire purchase agreement. You see that? So we did this. This was on hire purchase. We will see if it's going to be necessary for us, then we'll pick one or two more examples to get a more comprehensive, you know, to get you all the basics, very much like all the different ways in which a question on hire purchase can be set. But this was one example that we did, which you possibly watched in one previous lesson. Now, we are still checking on this finance and banking. And one thing we have seen in this finance and banking is that by the end of it, we will be able to deal with this thing of interest, compound interest and simple interest, again, calculating it, then possibly the concept of small loans and what? And hire purchase agreements, okay? What is this thing called hire purchase agreement? Then later we will also compare what? Bank charges for different types of accounts, okay? Now, the other thing, though the small context here is that you guys need to be able to work in context relating to banking, bank account, and small loan and hire purchase agreements. Now, here is some small thing again that we can check through. What we have here is that, well, now under banking, the first thing we will be looking at is the investigation or investigating how interest is calculated on money in different types of account. Now, this is very important for you to understand because the money which is withdrawn or which is charged each time you withdraw some money from a given bank or from any ATM point, that money is very much an indication of the interest. So yes, banks will be charging you different amount of money and you need to know how this money is calculated. You really need to know how this money is calculated and which type of account you are operating, you see. So the type of account you're operating obviously will help you to see, you know, will help you so much in the calculation here. So yes, just a small description here. We have what is called transactional account and fixed deposit account. So transactional account is very much like the account that you use basically every day. You know, you want to withdraw some money, you go get it from there. You want to deposit some money, you go deposit. You want to buy something, you swipe your card. You know, you want to make some payment, you do money transfer. That is called a transactional account. So in a very precise way, this is an account where transactions occur on the account on a regular basis. So transactions happen here on a fairly regular basis. Basically every day, you know, you need some airtime, you buy from the account. You want to do money transfer, you use that account. You want to pay, you know, for rent, you use that account. You want to buy something, you use that, you know, you swipe and stuff like that. So that's the reason we are saying this is the account where transactions occur. Okay, by transactions we mean withdrawals of money, payments of money, deposits and stuff like that. Now as such, the balance in the account can change quite regularly. So because you do the transaction quite, regularly, meaning you do it almost every day. Sometimes you even do it twice a day. Sometimes you skip a day or 2 days, then you do it again. This type of account means the balance in the account will also change quite regularly. Now, how do we talk about the interest in this case? Now, the interest here is calculated, okay? The interest here is calculated at the end of every day to the account to account for the fact that the balance in the account may change on a daily basis. So very much like trying to say, because the bank expects you to be using this account basically every day, what now happens is that they calculate interest on a daily basis. Okay? The interest that the bank charges is on a daily basis for this type of account. That is, by the end of the day, they do that. They calculate the interest. It's some kind of an automatic thing. So the bank is already set. Once you open an account there, and that type of account is known as the transactional account, or it is grouped under transactional account, well then every day the bank will be charging you what? Interest. Then now, the other type of account is called fixed deposit account. Fixed deposit is very much like you have some amount of money that you don't plan to use in a short period of time, okay? So you get that money, you go and you deposit it. And when you deposit it there, well, it stays up to some period of time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, or maybe 5 years, okay? So that type of account is known as fixed deposit account. So in a very precise way, we can describe this as the type of account, okay, or in this type of account, money is invested in the account and then left to grow with interest over a period of time, okay? So normally what happens here is the bank will pay you some money when you put some fixed amount of money in an account known as fixed deposit account. The bank will pay you. Well, why will the bank pay you? Because the bank will get an assurance from you that you're not about to use that money anytime soon. You see that? So possibly you'll be like, well, I'm going to put this amount of money, say 20,000 rand. I'm going to put this amount of money in this account, fixed deposit account, and then this amount of money, I'm not going to use it for a full year. So you see now the bank will take that money and give it out as loan. So the bank will give it, some loans will last 3 months, some loan will last 6 months, others will last a full year. So you see the bank will be making some money from the money you have kept with them. And that type of money which the bank gives out is the money in the fixed deposit account. And for that, the bank will also pay you some money, okay? Because you have trusted them with that amount of money and you're not going to use it. So the bank can even buy a house, with that money, because it's obviously not only you with that type of account. You find, tens of thousands of people having that type of account. So the bank can be like, well, over this period of 6 months, let's buy a house and we advertise and we sell it. So a bank can buy a house, say at 200,000, then they renovate it, they repair the house, costing them like some extra 50,000, and they sell it, say like at 300,000 or 500,000. Yes, the bank will have made some good profit from that money you kept with them. So this is called fixed deposit account. Now here is the question. How is interest calculated in this case? Well, since the balance does not change during the month, interest is calculated on the balance at the beginning of the month and then multiplied by the what? By the number of days in the month to give the total monthly interest. This interest is added to money in the account at the end of the month. See that? So yes, that is how the interest is calculated. It's calculated, at the beginning of a new month. And that interest is then multiplied by the number of days in that month, okay, to give the total monthly interest. So very much like saying, the bank will be like, well, since this money is going to be here with us for this full year, for this first month of January, what we are going to do is, well, let's start on the 1st of January. So they'll be like, the interest rate, okay, maybe 0.02%. So it will be 0.02% of what you have saved there. So they get that. And then they multiply that by the number of days in that given month. And when they do that for a full year, what you get is what? The interest per annum. So that is how interest is calculated on fixed deposit account. Okay, that is how interest is calculated on fixed deposit account and also on transactional account. Now, we can look at possibly a worked example real quick here, and we see how that works. Or maybe before that, well, I had talked briefly about hire purchase. Now, I said in a hire purchase and the loan system, the following terms must be understood with respect to hire purchase and loan what? Loan agreement. Buying of credits, deposit, monthly payment or monthly repayment, then there is interest, total cost, length, life of loan, like that. So starting with the last one, the length or life of a loan is like the period of time over which that loan is supposed to be serviced. The loan is supposed to be paid. So if you get some amount of money for loan and it's supposed to be paid over a period of 1 year, the life of the loan is 1 year. Okay. Then the total cost, this is including the deposits and any interest paid. That is, like the total of all the costs, which is going to be what? Which is going to be the amount of money that you have with you, including the deposit you have made initially plus any interest to be paid. Very much like trying to say, well, if you are, for example, dealing with this case of the TV, then the total cost in this case is going to be, it is going to include the deposit, the monthly payment that you have to make, plus the what? Plus the interest that you have to pay. That gives us what we call the total what? The total cost. Then this thing called the interest, well, the interest is, this amount of money which is charged on loan, which is given to someone. So you have taken some money in terms of loan, obviously you will pay more when it's time for returning. That excess is called the interest. The monthly payment or monthly repayment, is very much like what we have been talking about. So you want this TV and you have got it, okay? And so after getting the TV, you now have to pay the money which is due. Very much like saying the monthly payment, like in this case, 24 equal monthly payment to this value. You see that? So the 24 monthly payment should add up to this amount of money here, which is 13,191.39. So this is the what? The monthly payment. Then the next thing here is what? The deposit, which is, the first installment that you pay, and buying on credit, buying when you don't have the money, you buy on credit, stuff like that, then you pay later. So now hire purchase, in description, with the hire purchase agreement, an item is purchased and paid for through monthly payments, okay? So an item is purchased, very much like when you want to buy something on hire purchase, you first take the item. Then after taking the item, you pay for it later. It's a very common form of payment at the moment, You have seen cars advertising, different companies making cars have been advertising. They allow you to own the car. Then you'll be paying for it every month. You see? You have adverts where you can be paying monthly, to the tune of 1,500, some cases 2,300, some cases 5,000, depending on what? On the brand of the car and, like the cost price and stuff like that. So yes, with hire purchase, you will be having the item with you, then you will be paying monthly the total cost, which is supposed to be paid so that you own the car in your name. Now, this is rather than through the buying of the item for cash where the whole purchase amount has to be paid upfront. You see, that's the difference. With cash payment, you have to pay everything at once. But now with hire purchase, well, you take the item and you pay for it later. Sounds like really a good deal, only when the interest becomes much. Buying on hire purchase is sometimes referred to as buying on credit or credit purchase. You see that? Then, now next is loan. With a loan agreement, an amount of money is borrowed and then paid back with interest through monthly payment. So with hire purchase, you're buying a physical item for the most part, or you're buying something that you're going to use directly. It is not like you're buying something, well, it's buying something that you're going to use. You could buy a house on hire purchase, okay? You could buy a house, you could buy a car, you could buy a TV, you could buy anything on hire purchase. But with the loan, it's mainly on monetary terms. Loan is money. So when you hear someone has been given loan, he has been given money. He has not been given something else like a commodity, a car, or a house, or whatnot. He has been given money. So we say with a loan agreement, an amount of money is borrowed and then paid back with interest through monthly payments. Now, the final amount paid for the item on hire purchase is always higher than the original purchase price. Yeah, you see now when we get back to hire purchase, which sounded like a really good deal. You know, you first take the commodity and you pay for it later. It's only a good deal when you don't understand it right. If you do, you notice the amount of money you will pay over that period of time is much, much, much higher. So for example, you find a car which is being sold at 215,000. Now this car, they will allow you to buy it on a hire purchase agreement and you pay for it over a period of like 20 years. So you want to ask yourself, how much is that going to be? If you do the calculation right, you will soon discover you paid for 2 cars when they have given you one. What that means is, you know, the interest was really that much that could buy 2 cars if you had the money in cash. A deposit will sometimes have to be paid for both hire purchase and loan agreement. Yes, sometimes before the bank gives you some money in terms of loan, they first want you to pay some initial deposit. Now, for the case of a loan, the bank will just cut from what they have to give you. Now, a deposit is a percentage of the purchase price or loan amount that represents a promise to buy or pay back the loan. That's the deposit. It's very much like the commitment. You want to buy something, well, show the commitment that you are really interested in buying that item. Then the total cost is is the amount that will be paid for an item bought on hire purchase or for a loan, including deposit, payments, all of them, and any service or administrative fees. Then the interest is the difference between the total amount of money paid for an item and the total amount paid back for the loan and the original amount, okay, for the item. So interest is like when you're given somebody 500,000 and you are expected to pay like 600,000. The difference between what you have to pay and what you were given is what we call the interest. Now, when it comes to comparing bank charges, well, the intention of this component in the learner's material is as follows: to use different bank fee formulae to compare bank charges on different types of transactions. We will be seeing those. Also, to make sense of the graphs drawn to represent different types of bank charges. Then, to make decisions regarding the cost of different types of transactions at different banks. We will be seeing that quite shortly. So, for example, here is the structure illustrating the different charges in a given bank. So the first structure here is for is that fixed cost plus an additional cost that is calculated as a percentage of the transactional value. See that? What's that supposed to mean? Now, this is going to make a lot of sense when we just look right away into a worked example. But before we go into a worked example, let's look at a small description. So here the fee is 3.9 plus 1.5% of the deposit value. So it's very much like trying to say each time you're going to deposit some money, well, you will be charged 3.9 rands plus 1.15% of what you want to deposit. See that? And now for this one here, for the second structure here, we see that same structure as one, but what? Maximum fee is stated. So in this case, the maximum fee is stated, over which this is calculated from. And here we have variable fee is charged as per 100 of the transactional value. So yes, these are the different ways through which banks will be charging you. So depending on the type of account, sometimes you are dealing with this type of account where you have the initial charge being like, well, in this type of account of yours, each time you do a transaction, like each time you withdraw some money, you know, like recently when you check on withdrawal, sometimes, well, depending on the bank you have used to withdraw or the ATM you have used to withdraw, sometimes they charge you 9 rand, sometimes 10 rand, sometimes, 7 rand, sometimes, like 5. But it's a lot. The question is, how do they reach that? Well, there are 3 different ways that we are going to be looking at. The first one being what? The first one being that you have, for every transaction done, whether you withdraw or you make money transfer or you swipe to buy something from, a supermarket or a shopping mall or somewhere, each time you transact, they will charge you. In this first case, what do we have? We have 3.9 rands. So this is what they're going to charge you. They're going to charge you 3.9 for any transaction you do. Then now, they will again charge you 1.15 of the what? Of the deposit value. You see that? So very much like trying to say, well, let's say you went to deposit 10,000 rands. So for depositing that money, the bank will charge you 3.9 rand. Then they will also charge you 1.15% of the deposit value. You see that? So in this case, it's going to be 3.9 plus 1.15%, that is out of 100 times the deposit value. So if you're dealing with the 10,000, then it will be 3.9 plus 1.15 out of 100 times 10,000. An example is right here. Rather, this is for the first case. Here they don't limit you. You can deposit any amount of money, okay? But now for the second one, they be like, well, here we are charging you 3.75 as the general charge for any transaction you do. Then later, you will also be charged 0.75% of the payment value with a maximum of 17 rands. What that then means is if you're making a payment or buying something, then they will charge you 3.75. Then later, they will also charge you 0.75% of the amount of money you're paying. But it will not go beyond 17 rand as their charges. And so here also, they have another case where, well, the fee is what? 1.05 for every 100 rand that was used in the transaction. You see that? Now, you can also look at this second one here. The method, well, this is now the method also here and there. Now, for the first method, we have that 1.1% of the transactional value is calculated and added to the fixed cost of this one, as I was indicating earlier. So you have 3.9% plus 1.15% or what of 500 if that is the amount of money transaction is being carried on. And that is what? That is going to be 5.75. And that is how you get to the 9.69. Then now here, for the second one, you have 0.75 of the transactional value is calculated and added to the fixed cost. Now check the solution to see if it's less than the maximum fee of this. If the fee is more than the maximum value, then it is replaced by the maximum value. You see? So that is what they normally do for some accounts. They may be having like, you know, a rate which is 3.9 or rather 3.75 plus 0.75% of the transactional value. Very much like trying to say, well, maybe you went to buy a car and you know a car is an expensive item. So because of the transaction, the bank will charge you 3.75 as the first transactional value. Then they will also charge you 0.75% of the payment value. So if you're buying a car of 200,000, so you will now have to pay 3.75, which is right this one here, plus 0.75 out of 100 times 200,000. That will obviously go beyond the 17 rand. So they will not charge you that extra amount. They will only take the what? The 17. And then lastly, there is this other one here, where you're supposed to work out how many 100s make up the transactional value and then multiply this number of hundreds by that. You see, for example, fee on 2,350 deposit, there will be 24 full 100s right here. As a result, you will have this by 24. Well, it makes a lot of sense when we look at this example here. So let's see this example. So here is an example that we have. Now, in this example, the bank in question is called the Town Bank. And the statement is that the Town Bank current account charges 3.3 rands plus 1.20 for every 100, which is withdrawn, you know, for every 100 rand, which is withdrawn. So that means if you withdraw only 100 rand, then you will pay in charges what? 3.3 plus 1.2. Well, let me have my calculation tab right here, so that we can do this calculation in writing. So as I indicated, Town Bank charges 3.30 rands plus 1.20, okay, plus 1.20 for every what? Well, 1.20 for every, okay, I think I just need to, all right, so yeah, I'm going to place this one right here, or even here. Yeah, we can have that. And now, all right, so there we go. What we want to deal with right now, well, there we go. So we want to carry out this calculation and see what we can get from this deal. All right, so there we go. Yeah, there we go, there we go, there we go. Yeah. So they're saying Town Bank current account charges 3.3 rands plus 1.20 for every 100, which is withdrawn as cash. You see? So what does this mean? Well, we are not supposed to do what? We are supposed to, well, the first 5 withdrawals in a month are free. This is some good deal, right? The first 5 withdrawals in a month are free. What is then charged? Well, the next withdrawal after the first 5, being if you withdraw once or twice or 2 times, 3 times, 4, the number of times you withdraw after the first 5 withdrawals, you will be charged. The question is, determine the bank charges for a withdrawal of 400, being the 6th withdrawal. So we would like to call this activity 1 part A, okay? So this is activity 1 part A. Yes, activity 1 part A. They said the first 5 withdrawals are free, but this one is now the 6th withdrawal. So what is the charge? So we say the charge in this case, okay? The charge in this case is going to be the original amount of money or the initial constant charge, which is 3.30 plus the 1.20, which is for every 100 rand which is withdrawn. Now, how many 100s do we have in 400? We have 4 100s. Okay, we have 100, 200, 300, 400. We have 4 100s in 400. Okay, so we can write this as what? As times 4. Now that will give us exactly what we are looking for. And what is that going to be? Well, let's get our calculator right away on board here. So we are looking for the solution to this question here. So I'm just going to put it right here, right away. Okay, so what are we supposed to do? Well, 3.30 is supposed to be added to 1.20 times 4. That gives us 8.1. So in run, the charge is going to be 8.10. That is going to be the charge for what? For withdrawing 400, making it as the 6th withdrawal. Now, we can go on to look at the second activity. That is activity 1, part B. Now, in activity 1, part B, we are supposed to do what? We are supposed to determine the bank charge or the bank charges for a withdrawal of what? 850, being the 4th withdrawal. Now, notice that the first 5 withdrawals in a month are free. So this one being the 4th withdrawal is going to be what? Is also going to be free. Yes, just that, no charge. A real good deal. Then in the next activity, that is in activity 1 part C, what we are supposed to do is to calculate the bank charges for a withdrawal of 3,000 rands, this being the 10th withdrawal. So now we say the charge in this case, is going to be the 3.30 plus the 1.2, that is 1.20, times what? Well, we say times the number of tens in 3,000. Well, turns out that there are 30 tens You see? Well, how else could you write that? We could write it this way. 3,000, we have to divide it by 100. Yes. If we divide it by 100, we will be seeing the number 100s in what? In 3,000. So when we divide this by 100, we remain with 30. So what will this result into? Well, using our calculator, this is going to be, first clear this is going to be 3.30 plus 1.20 times 30. And that gives us what? 39 rands. That's quite a lot, right? Yes. This is going to be 39 point what? 0.30 or comma 30, like that. So that is going to be the charge, okay, for this fellow. Now, the next thing we want to look at is activity D. Okay, so we are going to call this activity 1 part D. Activity 1 part D. So in activity 1 part D, we are supposed to calculate what? We are supposed to calculate the bank charges if 250 was withdrawn as the 7th withdrawal. So the question here is, how many 100s do you have in 250? Well, it turns out that we have 2 100s, okay? Then we have that 50. Everything is S of 100. You see that? So in this case, the charge is going to be calculated from the original amount, which is 3.30, that we have to add. This time, what are we adding this to? Well, we are adding this to 1.20 times, okay? Remember, this is the 7th withdrawal. It's beyond the 5th withdrawal. So we are going to multiply this. And multiply with what? We are going to multiply with the number of hundreds in 250. Well, it turns out that there are 2.5 hundreds. And so we round that to 300s, which we could also write as 250 divided by 100. This way, we can carry on our calculation. Well, when we calculate this quite carefully, we'll be having 3.30, okay, plus 1.2 or 1.20, which we then have to multiply with what? With 3. This one will give us 6.9. So yes, it's going to be 6.90. So this is the charge. So this is one way in which bank charges can be calculated. Sometimes bank charges carries the initial rate plus, some value times the transactional rate. Sometimes they don't want to go too much into the transactional rate, so they will limit it a little bit. That's possible. But in the event that they have not limited what they want to withdraw from you or what they want to charge you to do, then it's a good deal, So this is how interest is charged. This is how bank charges are made. Okay, so I had talked of comparing the different charges. So this is one way that appeared as what? It appeared as the last example here. Rather, yes, the last. So here in structure 3, variable fee that is charged per 100 of the transaction value. You see, that is exactly what we have been looking at. Like in this case, the fee is 1.05 per 100 rand. So if you go and do a transaction of 200, then now you have to divide 200 by 100 so that you get a number of times 100 is into 200. If you do a deal of 50,000, then you have to do what? you have to multiply 1.05 times, you know, that money, like the 50,000 divided by 100. Why do you do that? Because you want to find out the number of times 50, rather 100 enters into 50,000. You always round up when you are calculating, should you get the decimal point. So that is how calculation is done. So that is a fairly expanded, you know, a fairly comprehensive example on how the structure, the third structure, can be calculated. Well, you could also have some other example, like in this case, we have question 2. Now in question 2, well, first, all right. So in question 2, we have it that this type of account called the success current account also charges. Now, how much do they charge? Well, they charge 3.75 plus 0.75 per full 100. Okay, so for a full 100, they charge that to a maximum of 25 rands for debit card purchase. Determine the charges of the purchase of, well, 375.55 rands, then also 990, and for C, 2,900. You could try that out. Please go ahead and try that out and submit what you will get. Then I will prepare a correction for that in the next video.